All right, welcome back, everybody. NBC News has just received that surveillance video in the shooting death of Cedric Chapman, and we're working to get that video to you. Chapman, as you may recall, was shot and killed 3 years ago by a Chicago police officer. A judge ordered the release of the video this morning in a hearing, and it comes one day after the city dropped its opposition to making the video public. Police have said they thought Chapman had a gun, and the officer was in fear of his life. Chapman's family said he wasn't armed, and the video is going to prove that. The family's attorney spoke to the media this morning and shared what they say people are going to come away with after seeing it for themselves.
I think what you're going to come away with is you're going to see a young kid running away from the police in broad daylight, and he is shot and killed.
The Independent Police Review Authority found the officer was justified in that shooting. We've got the latest from Chicago, the legal ramifications on this release. NBC's John Yang is going to join me from Chicago about this. And John, do we know the video itself, what it is expected to depict?
Well, I've seen there are 3 different cameras that were released, Thomas. I've seen 2 of them. One, the most, I mean, none of them are very conclusive. None of them are really sort of telling in the same way that the Laquan McDonald videotape was. The one that I've seen the most is from one of those observational police cameras, one of those glass globes you see hanging over an intersection. The camera shifts from street to street periodically. You can see the car that's Chapman is in stopping at the intersection. You see them getting out of the Chapman getting out. He's being chased. Their officer is very close behind him. That officer you can see there in the street, in the intersection, I believe, based on the description of the lawyers, the family lawyers to me, is Lou Toth, the officer who did not fire. In the sort of lower corner, let's see if we can see it again. I've got a little delay on my return monitor here. But you really can't see the key moment that is in question. The officers say that Chapman turned or started to turn toward the officers and pointed an object in his hands toward the officer, and that's why he fired. That takes place out of frame of this shot that you're looking at now. And then when the camera shifts to look down that street, you see the policeman over Chapman, or what I believe to be, or based on the description that the family lawyers made at the news conference, the police officer over Chapman's body already down on the ground. You don't see the moment whether or not Chapman turned toward the officers, whether or not Chapman pointed something at the officer, and you don't see the moment where Chapman is shot.
Okay, John, stand by for me. MSNBC Chief Legal Correspondent Ari Melber. Ari, you're looking at this, and we know that there was a reversal by the city, their opposition to have this released.
That's right. This is brand new video we're looking at. It is difficult, as John Yang was saying, but if we continue to replay it, I just want to speak to it. As John mentioned, this is the kind of automatically turning camera, so that's not, as we understand it, any human action. This camera was automatically pivoting. That's why you get that jump. When it starts now, as you see now, the officer is coming in the lower third of the frame, moving to the right. His gun is drawn, but we don't have information confirming whether he's shot. Indeed, we've heard that he's not the shooter, but you see him. Then that black object you see about on a few inches to the right of the orange awning, that is what we believe to be the decedent, would be the formal term, the young man, 17-year-old Cedric Chapman, who was shot and killed that day, although we cannot see necessarily the shooter. So this is brand new. This is the video, what we're seeing now for the first time. We just reviewed it in our newsroom, that shows those final moments that Cedric Chapman died, shot there by police in the daylight, pursuant to what they say was A, a carjacking incident prior, and B, what police say was their view, that he posed an imminent deadly threat based on their mistaken view that he was holding a firearm. So that's what we have here. That's what's new. I can give more background, but I just want to walk us through what we're looking at, why it's new and significant. And for those watching this saying, not sure that it clarifies anything, that may be, but this is something that the Chicago City and police had fought for 2 years now to avoid releasing. Now we finally have it. What we see in regard to the shooting itself is somewhat inconclusive, at least from this camera angle, Thomas.
And this involves Officer Kevin Fry, his partner Lou Toth. They were responding to this carjacking on January 7th. 17-year-old Cedric Chapman's vehicle matched the description of that of the stolen vehicle. I want to ask, Joe Giacalone is here on set with me from John Jay Criminal College, and as you think about what the police are characterizing this as, and you look at this video, Joe, is it... Okay, so this is seconds after it happened. This is the video that we're looking at right now. But from what you saw from the cop on the corner and then the camera turning, is it acceptable or fair to say that this is somehow justified?
Well, like I said, you look at this video and it's so, it's even a little grainy, plus he's also turning right into the sun. It's very difficult to see. I mean, from the officer's perspective, of course, he's going to say that he turned towards me, but the medical reports should be able to confirm that for us.
Okay, but there has been an issue of, and we can see now first responders on the scene in this video clip now, but an issue of problems within Chicago and its police department, whether covering up or trying not to tell all the details about certain scenarios of police shooting deaths.
Right.
So does this play into that narrative?
Well, it has to. I mean, you watch this video and you say, well, why didn't they want to release this? This might be something that's pretty pandemic throughout the Chicago Police Department, where they don't want any of these videos to be released because they don't want any of this bad publicity. But it's like they got to get out in front of this. So they have to be able to put every bad video that they think they have, or any video, and finally get it out there, because you can't say you're transparent the day that the judge tells you that, to release this.
All right, so, all right, let me bring you back in, because the family has filed this wrongful death lawsuit. There were not charges filed against the officers.
That's correct. And what is interesting is it is a fact that at the end of the internal review process, the internal police department that reviews these things cleared the officers, and that's been an area of some controversy. But we should note there are two lawsuits, the one you just mentioned, a wrongful death suit from the family member, and a wrongful termination suit from a Chicago officer who was fired because when he was working in that very internal review department on this case, among others, he put forward that there might have been wrongdoing, there might have been disciplinary action. Now, that conclusion wasn't held and wasn't based solely on this brand new video, though they would have access to that, but was based on the totality of their review. So one of the things that happens, Thomas, is we get a new video like this, obviously to some degree a bigger news story because Rahm Emanuel and the city of Chicago fought so hard to have it held secret. But this is not the only piece of evidence. The other evidence, of course, you see on the scene, and we can show it potentially, eventually a fire truck pulls up and folks gather around the 17-year-old's body, and then he's pronounced dead later. What they found, of course, was that he wasn't actually holding a weapon, that it is broad daylight. And now that cuts both ways. The police would say, yeah, broad daylight, lots of people around. If he's armed and there's a carjacking, there's a threat. On the other hand, you could say, broad daylight, he's far away. Did he pose the kind of imminent threat to justify deadly force? Those are the open questions here.
All right. So, Joe, let me ask you, because this is an issue with Chicago because of the December 2014 incident with Laquan McDonald that has called into trust the integrity of the Emanuel administration, this police department, this happening in 2013. How can Chicago course correct about you reap what you sow? And now we're looking and living through what this city has been dealing with in a completely different lens.
Sure. I mean, the police department has some major issues here, and so does the Emanuel. He's got a lot of problems here. This is what the issue is. The police training that goes on in Chicago about firearms use has to be looked at with a fine-tooth comb. Isolate and contain, cover and concealment. And you know what? When you're in broad daylight and you have an opportunity to take cover behind a whatever kind of vehicle, whatever it is, you take all the time necessary, because that's what helps you make that split-second decision if this person should be shot or not. And I know, Ari, basically he was, mentioning the Tennessee versus Garner thing, the fleeing felon rule. I mean, I don't even see the fleeing felon rule in here even coming into play. So, I mean, to me, this was something that they could have held off on it if they would have just taken the proper tactics in order to make sure that they were able to get that extra couple of seconds that they needed before they had to fire their guns.
Joe, I just want to let everybody know we're working on new video angles, images from this incident that are coming in. We're going to have those turned around. But Ari, you wanted to say?
Yeah, I mean, mention the fleeing felon rule. Again, for viewers, this is the point that just because someone may be a criminal or even a fugitive does not mean that under the rules, that means they should face consequences, but that doesn't mean they face the consequence of shooting to kill or an execution in the street, right? That is the subtle distinction that can get lost. So what is going to be fought over in this video that we're looking at, and you see the officer again there for folks joining in the lower part of the screen, and the dark object that looks like could or could not be a person to the right of the orange awning, that we believe is Mr. Chapman when he fell and was killed. The question here isn't simply what did the officers think or what was the potential danger. The legal question is, in what you see on this video and other information we're obtaining and reviewing in our newsroom as we speak, do you see the justification for deadly force presented as a threat by this individual? And so I think what Joe's saying, and Joe, you could chime in more, from a policing perspective, I guess one question watching this new video is, Joe, what else could police have done short of using that deadly force?
Well, listen, I mean, they're out on the street, you're out on the open, you're gonna have to chase this guy down. And listen, this is what the police do every day. We're taught we have a variety of weapons that are at our disposal. And, when you're in broad daylight and you're on a street like this, it's a commercial area too, you have to be very careful about firing your gun, because what happens is you can hit innocent people too. So here's where some hesitation, here's where if they had a chance to be able to take some cover and be able to assess the situation, it might be better off.
Well, and in this situation too, the excuse given for this demonstration of force is the police officer saying they are in fear of their life. That's how they characterized it, also feeling that they thought Chapman had a weapon. Is that just a blanket way for a cop to get out of a killing incident? Just say, I was in fear of my life.
Well, I mean,
that's
that's basically the standard line that everybody's going to be using. But the problem is that this officer doesn't put himself in any other position other than to say that he had a fear for his life, so that he doesn't take any steps in order to prevent this fatal shooting. And this is what we've done here in New York City. We've done it it's been done in other places. I mean, they need to look at even the firearms they use, maybe a heavier trigger, so that this is not so easy to pull the trigger, that you have that extra split second before you do it. I mean, in New York City, we have a 12-pound trigger.
Right.
Guns come out of the factory at 3 pounds, and believe it or not, that's a big difference.
Again, I think your mic is down right now. Ari, you want to say real quickly, I'm going to give you the last word.
Yeah, the only other thing that is notable here as we think about the police perspective, Thomas correctly mentioning, of course, that they have invoked the threat to life. There also are claims, and we know this because of the lawsuits, there are claims by and defenses by police that Mr. Chapman was not only holding some sort of case that I believe turned out to be an iPhone case, so essentially a small box, but that he stopped and held it up in a manner that they thought was a gun and was threatening. Now, I don't think, the lawyers would say, is this video dispositive? Does this video answer the question? No, I don't think this video answers that question, but I will say from what we can see in this limited form, it doesn't seem to help that police claim. So in Laquan McDonald, the police claim was that he lunged with a knife. Video didn't show that at all. Video disproved that. Here it's an open question, but it doesn't seem from that jump shot that he's stopped and waving around a box, at least what we can see in the new video.
All right, so we're going to have different angles of this coming in. I want to say thanks to Joe Johnson.